morning, everyone, and thank you for coming. Historic day in the criminal justice system. A little background. In the governor's 2017 and 18 budget, the New York State Assembly passed Chapter 492, amending Section 212 of the Judiciary Law to allow the Chief Administrative Judge to establish a plan for off-hours arraignment parts in the local courts. This legislation was intended to improve access to public defenders or assigned counsel for indigent defendants. This statute allows law enforcement to bring a person accused to a centralized arraignment part when all courts are closed at off hours, and then send the case back to the court that has the trial jurisdiction. The Uniform Justice Court Act was modified to allow a rotation of elected magistrates at the CAP location. In 2019, after bail reform and the revisions resulted in a reduction in the need of off-hour arraignments, as magistrates are instead directing law enforcement to issue appearance tickets where appearances would occur during court scheduled time. This really caused a lot of issues in the criminal justice system. As you know, the state passed these laws without any training, and it was unfunded, and it gave, as you know, a lot of issues within our county. I'm really happy at all the work that we started over 3 years ago with the legislature and the Criminal Justice Task Force. There was a committee, and the chairman was Andy Kossover. I was the vice chairman, and then eventually the chief, at the time, the law enforcement committee chair, Eve Walter, who's been working on this for over 15 years, took the lead, and we were able to accomplish something that we've been trying to work on for a very long time. I want to thank the legislature. I want to thank Eve Walter, Andy Kossover. I want to thank my staff for putting together all the logistics, and of course our maintenance that build the court. I want to thank the magistrates. I remember our first meeting, it was like, no way, we're not doing this. We're not going to do it, forget it. And here we are today to officially open Ulster County Centralized Arraignment Court. I'm really proud that all sections of government banded together to make this happen, to streamline the criminal justice system in Ulster County. And it is a big day when we get the public defender, the district attorney's office, the law enforcement community, the county executive, the legislature to all pull together and make something like this happen. And I thank County Executive Metzger and her staff for supporting the last year or so of something that I thought wasn't going to happen this year. But we made it, and we did it. And this is just the beginning of, there's going to be a lot of changes, I'm sure, once we move forward, and a lot of growing pains. But I believe this is great for our criminal justice system, because all the judges, all the prosecutors, all of law enforcement and public defenders are going to have a centralized location, and it's going to be, everyone's going to be dealt with the same way. And I'm proud of our legislature, our chairman, Mr. Creswell, our law enforcement committee chair, Gina Hansen, for supporting the endeavors of everyone involved. Without further ado, I want to turn this over to Eve Walter.
For anyone who knows me, knows that I like to get the job done. This has got to be the longest endeavor I have ever had in my entire life. So yes, about 15 years ago is when this process started. So back then, the Office of Indigent Legal Services offered a grant to ensure that everyone who was facing a judge had counsel. Rob Sudlow, who was the deputy county executive at the time, enlisted my help, along with the public defender at the time, Andy Kossover, to devise an innovative plan that recognized an innovative plan. The state funded us and actually stated that it was the most innovative plan in all of New York State. They loved it. It was different than what any other county had suggested. We arrived at this plan after seeking feedback from public defenders, the executive's office, the DA's office. That wasn't easy. Law enforcement, even IT was involved. But we failed to include the magistrates, whose lives would be impacted most by this plan. It was 15 years ago. I was stupid. Unsurprisingly, they rejected it. Why would we do that? Why would we think of something that would impact their lives without getting their input before we actually put it forward? So we regrouped, led by the public defender, and created the quadrant model, which focused solely on a workflow change in the defender's office and let the judges just continue as they were. And this worked temporarily, but it was weakened because we have a very big county geographically. There's staff shortages, there's COVID. At the same time, as the sheriff pointed out, there was a law change that allowed judges to hear cases outside their municipalities, which enabled centralized courts for off-hours appearances. This is a concept that we had dreamed about years ago. 15 years ago, sitting with the magistrates over Italian food in New Paltz, we kind of chuckled at the idea that wouldn't it be great if one day we could just have centralized court, but never really actually thought it could happen. As the chair of the Legislative Criminal Justice Reform Task Force, I partnered again with Andy, serving through his state role, and our sheriff, to make Ulster a CAP county. But this time, we involved all law enforcement branches, including municipalities and on a county level. We had community members. We had, most crucially, the magistrates. Gaining their buy-in was challenging, is that a good word? But it was essential. And through persistent dialogues and more Italian dinners, thank you all for feeding me, we secured their openness to explore the idea. And they visited other counties and they asked questions and they eventually agreed. The day Judge Bacon called me up and told me that the magistrates were in, I couldn't believe it. I didn't think this day was actually ever going to happen. I immediately introduced legislation to establish our county as a CAP county. And I'm so excited that we've finally realized this dream. We are really early in this journey, and while it will not be perfect, I am so grateful to the magistrates' openness and commitment to this. We all share the belief that no one should navigate the legal system alone and unsupported. And I'm forever grateful to every one of you who made this happen. Thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce the County Executive, Jen Metzger.
Thank you, Eve. And, it's so important to get the whole historical perspective on this. This did not happen overnight. And I'm going to spend some time, I'm sorry, there's so many different individuals and so many people to thank in this process. So I just, first of all, just generally want to thank all of the players and organizations involved in bringing Centralized Arrangement Part, known as CAP Court, to fruition. As you've heard, it's taken many years and at times was an uphill battle. And it's only through the hard work and cooperation of numerous stakeholders with great leadership to bring this all together. This is a solution that makes sense and one that many counties have already adopted because of the inherent challenges of on-call arraignment programs in large rural counties like Ulster. CAP Court will provide much needed relief for our county's criminal justice system by centralizing after-hours arraignments at one location, right here in the Law Enforcement Center. Creating CAP Court had many moving parts, as you've heard, with many people involved, but it's just taken so much hard work, dedication, coordination, and cooperation, and we now have a court process that will help the whole system work much more smoothly and much more effectively. And I do want to say this is a new thing, so I want to kind of echo the sheriff's point that there may be some growing pains at first, but this is absolutely the right direction to go in. So I want to start off by by thanking both Eve Walter and Andy Kosover for their early leadership on this. I want to thank Sheriff Juan Figueroa for his steadfast dedication and guidance, along with all of the devoted members of the Ulster County Sheriff's Office who have worked on this and are an important part of its success, including our team of corrections. I also want to recognize the important roles played by the Magistrate Cap Court Committee, the Ulster County Criminal Justice Task Force, which Eve has chaired, the current and former members of the legislature. I've already recognized you many times, but also former chair Tracy Bartels, our current chair Peter Criswell, and our current amazing law enforcement or public safety chair Gina Hansen, right over there. We also want to acknowledge the contributions of Leanne Warren, Leanne Buckinger, and Marianne Wells of the New York court system, our public defender Liz Corrado, the DA's office, Judge Kyle Barnett, who I'll introduce in a moment, Judge Margaret Howe, Judge Susan Kessick, and all our local justices, as well as court administrators, attorneys, and clerks involved in this process and who will ultimately contribute to its success. Thank you for your training, for all your hard work, and for your cooperation in creating this solution. It took many hands and many years to get us to this day, and I just want to express our gratitude on behalf of my office and the county for getting here. Thank you so much. And now, it is my great honor and pleasure to introduce the Kyle Barnett, Judge Kyle Barnett, former president, sorry, of the Ulster County Magistrates Association. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen. Thank the exec for that introduction. I appreciate that. So, yeah, I was actually there about 4 years ago. I had just actually taken the bench when a poll had been taken at a magistrates meeting about whether or not we wanted cap porn. And being new and not really knowing any better, I didn't know one way or the other whether this seemed like a good idea, but not a single hand went up in favor of cap porn, not one. It was then several months later, as I started to familiarize myself with the process of how the prior system was working, that it occurred to me that maybe there was a better way we could do this. And what ended up happening was myself and some other judges that have been mentioned before, Judge Kessick, Judge Bacon, and others, saw a crisis looming on the horizon that was actually going to only get worse. We were running into problems with shortages with public defenders who wanted to go out at 2 o'clock in the morning for a few dollars an hour, chasing around the different towns to handle these arraignments. We were running into other problems, with other jurisdictions. Law enforcement was getting stretched thin, and we could see this was only going to get worse. And so, with that, a bunch of us got together, and we started working with our other fellow magistrates on discussing the benefits of actually moving forward with the cap court. And fortunately, with that, in a short period of time, we had just about everybody from the magistrates, literally within just maybe a several-month period of time, we went from a unanimous no to a unanimous yes. And so I just really want to, before I say anything further, thank all my fellow magistrates for their faith in this, for their support, and for coming around, because without them, obviously, this would have never happened. And I can tell you that is really when the hard work began. Because, as any of you know, change, no matter what it is difficult. You try to change something the way a government's been working for the past decades, it's almost insurmountable, if not near impossible, as anyone in government practically knows. So it was a challenge. We had to bring a lot of people together, not just, obviously, it wasn't just the magistrates. As Legislator Walter was mentioning before, obviously we needed support from the Public Defender's Office. We needed support from the District Attorney's Office. But most critically, we needed a sheriff who was going to be supportive. And let me tell you something, Sheriff Figueroa showed up in spades. If it wasn't for this man, I can't say it enough, this would have never happened. I've spoken to other counties, because I practice in other counties, talked to some of these other local judges. they can't get CAP going. Why? Because the sheriff won't support it. So I just want to thank again. I know he's been thanked several times. Can't thank him enough, Sheriff Bigelow. And on top of that, also the folks on his team that built that CAP court. It's beautiful. I really encourage you to go up there and take a look at it. That was a lot of hard work. Really, really great job in terms of getting that done. And the other thing, as challenging and as difficult as this was, and there were many times where we thought, maybe we're not going to make this happen, this isn't going to happen. But having gone through that process and seeing all the challenges, there was really something else that was kind of fascinating. I mean, seeing people of different political persuasions, different agendas, different motivations, different interests, to come together, not for the glory, not for the accolades, but actually for the common good. Because for several reasons, these people who are been accused of a crime or following their arrest, they deserve representation at these arraignments. I mean, that's something that myself and all of the judges in Ulster County take very seriously. Also, it's equally important that we live in a safe community and that law enforcement be able to do its job. So pulling all these people together really was not for anybody's personal interest, but for the common good. Everyone came together for the common good. And it was really fascinating and very encouraging to see government work the way it's intended. And that's exactly what I think we're seeing here today. So I just want to, everyone I think that I wanted to thank has been thanked. I do want to thank, as I mentioned, Judge Bacon for the CAP committee, Judge Kessick, Judge Cox, also was on our CAP committee, our current president, Judge Howe. And then I also wanted, if I'm not getting you on this list, please know it's not because we don't appreciate the contribution, but of course, our public defender, Liz Corrado, who was very helpful and supportive in this process. Our county executive, of course, Andy Kossover has been mentioned a few times. But I also want to mention, because I spoke about the courtroom, Steve Burke and Paul Genther. Those were the guys who were responsible for helping us build that courtroom. Beautiful job. Legislature Hansett also has been very, very supportive. Couldn't have done it without her, and many others. And I also do want to thank Dave Delahunt, who was our OCA liaison, who eventually ended up being a real help to getting this done. So we really appreciate his efforts as well. No, he's been great. He really has. So today we can appreciate the hard work that all these public servants have done. And then come Monday, this court opens and we get to work. Thank you very much. Sorry, I knew I was going to mess this up somehow. I would like to introduce our chair of the Ulster County Legislature, Peter Truswell.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here today on this historic occasion. Today marks a significant milestone in the advancement of our justice system with the opening of Ulster County's Centralized Arraignment Part or CAP Court. Off-hour arraignments have historically placed a great strain on municipalities across our county, disproportionately affecting indigent defendants. The establishment of the CAP program is a direct response to these challenges and is part of the important reforms spurred by the 2015 Hurl-Herring settlement. This landmark case highlighted the constitutional deficiencies in the services and resources provided to indigent criminal defendants and set the stage for the necessary changes that we see today. Ulster County's CAP program ensures that every criminal defendant has an attorney present at arraignment. It's a crucial step where bail is set and other important decisions are made. Our tailored approach will efficiently utilize countywide resources and reduce logistical barriers, making sure that judges, defense attorneys, and staff are readily available during designated morning and evening periods. This will not only streamline our processes, but also uphold the constitutional rights of every defendant. That's really key, the constitutional rights of every defendant, ensuring fair and timely administration of justice. I also want to extend my deepest gratitude to everyone who has worked tirelessly to bring this program to fruition. Your dedication and hard work have been instrumental in realizing this crucial step forward. The collaboration and efforts put into this project reflect our shared commitment to a fairer, more efficient justice system for all members of our community. Thank you for being here today and for recognizing this important occasion. Together, we are ensuring that justice in Ulster County is served efficiently and equitably. Thank you very much. It is my great honor to introduce Ulster County Public Defender Elizabeth Carrano.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. I come very late to this game. Everyone here has been so much more involved in this than my office under my leadership. I want to absolutely thank Andy Kosover, who paved the way for me to be the public defender that I am today. We have worked with intensity the last year. In my office has been the top of our agenda to get this done. And I echo all the sentiments and everything that's been said up here today. I don't need to repeat them. And my office is thrilled that this is finally coming to fruition. And I thank everyone who has been part of it, and particularly Judge Barnett, who has been incredibly supportive, and Sheriff Figueroa. And until today, I did not know how Dr. Walter had been so instrumental for this. So I also want to extend my thanks to you and to everybody else. Thank you, and I'm really looking forward to this beginning.
There are some folks that I definitely want to recognize, and that is the OC County Chiefs Association and the chiefs and our supervisors, our town supervisors. We had to get all these memorandums of agreements, through their town councils and passed, which is a lot of work. And of course, our clerks. You can't forget the importance of our clerks. To the magistrates, Judge Barnett, and I see there are a few here, Judge Bacon, Judge Kessick, Judge Stan Odell. Thank you, and Judge Cox and others. If I missed someone, forgive me. But you guys really did your homework, and like Judge Barnett said, you changed your minds, and we were able to get this going because, as Dr. Walter said, there's no way we could have done this without the magistrates and all the hard work and the homework that you put in. There are 20 counties in the state of New York that have cap court already. So we basically did our homework, and why reinvent the wheel? And that's what we did together. We are going to take a walk up to the new cap court right after this, but I'd like to open this to questions right now, if anybody has questions.
Maybe it's a question for Judge Barnett.
Judge Barnett, come on up.
This seems like such an obvious solution, and I'm curious about, what were some of the obstacles, issues in terms of getting the buy-in from magistrates? What was the sticking point there, and how was it resolved?
Well, honestly, the one of the issues that we ran into, which I think was a point well taken, is the fact that there's obviously going to be some degree of pre-arraignment detention that's going to take place. So there may be the case or two where, under the prior system, some defendants may have been arraigned and then released shortly thereafter. Whereas this case, there'll have to be a time period where there's that pre-detention arraignment. But in the end, what changed that was the fact that it actually, once we started looking at this, the defendant was actually far greater inconvenienced by the amount of time, the process that was involved from the arrest to then the arresting officer has to find a judge somewhere in the early mornings of the hour. Then that judge then has to find a public defender that's available in the early morning hour. And then everyone has to get to the court. And then by the time everyone gets there, it's several hours anyway. And then what ended up happening was, in some cases, and this was through no fault of anyone, just the demographics, we were having a shortage of public defenders who were available to appear at these arraignments. And so then the judge and the court and everybody was faced with the very untenable position of having to make a decision as to what to do: go forward with the arraignment without representation, or hold the defendant anyway until the morning time. So all those issues just came to the forefront, and as a result of that, we realized this would be a far more efficient and fair and just process.
I want to follow up with that real quick, just so
That's
everyone
what I
knows
just
that there's a
point out.
public safety issue as well when you tie up law enforcement for so many hours. There's no one out there to patrol. So that was another issue.
Right. I'm just curious, have all the town courts signed on to this right now? Okay.
Yes.
How does the rotation work?
In terms of the judges?
Judges and public defenders.
Sure. So the public defender, Public Defender Corrado can speak on this in more detail from her office, but they're going to have now what happens is they have an attorney assigned to Cap Court. And I believe the district attorneys is going to be doing something similar to that as well. So when Cap is in session, there's going to be an attorney there for that entire session. In terms of the judges, all of the judges, it's voluntary for the judges. They don't have to sign up if they don't want to. But for those judges that have signed up, they're put on a calendar, and each of us is then called, if we're on duty, we're the duty judge, and you're on duty whatever morning you've signed up for the entire month. So the calendar is actually prepared a month in advance. Every judge signs up for their time, and that gets distributed, obviously, to the arresting agencies and the sheriff's office, and that's how that rotation works.
And how will the hours work? And you said evenings and mornings, so what happens to the middle of the night?
So it's 6 a.m., the court is in session, the Cap Court's in session between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. in the morning, 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. in the evening. If an arrest happens during the day when the court of original jurisdiction is in session, or an adjoining jurisdiction, which would also have jurisdiction over the defendant, if they're in session, an arraignment can take place at those courts. If neither of those courts are in session and an eligible arrest takes place, then the defendant would be held over for the purposes of the Cap Court once Cap is in session.
So you can hold someone, instead of hold them at a police station, which may or may not have a lockup, you'll hold them over until Cap Court opens up at 6 in the morning.
That's
Okay.
precisely correct. They'll be brought here. The sheriff can speak to this, but a holding cell has been designed specifically separate. They're not in general population. They're in a specific separate holding cell designed and built only for Cap arraignments, and that's where the arrestee will be held until Cap goes into session.
There's no intake to the jail or anything, they just...
No, we're still gonna do an intake because they're medical,
Right.
they do a medical check-in, it's a huge
But
liability.
they're not
if they
going
don't
to
do
pods though, it's still whole
that.
separate.
They'll go into our housing unit, but separate from the
Okay.
regular population.
All right.
And I just wanna add, Judge, if you can talk about what the arraignments are for, because some folks don't know what's qualifying.
Yeah.
offenses.
So arraignments. These arraignments are only going to be for what's called qualifying offenses. What's qualifying offense? Qualifying offense is a result of the bail reform laws that were passed a few years ago, where now there's only certain offenses for which the court would have jurisdiction to either set bail or to remand. In some cases, remand is mandatory. In many cases, bail, if it's going to be set, if it's eligible, the court has to follow certain criteria to determine whether or not to set bail. So it'll only be for those types of offenses. For offenses for which they are not qualifying, for which the court has no discretion to set bail, those defendants will be issued an appearance ticket.
I have a question for the sheriff.
Sure.
Your dedication to this was mentioned a few times. Can you talk about why it was a priority for you to get this done?
So I was a member of the first committee relating as the vice chair for Mr. Kossover, who was the chair. And it was important that law enforcement had a seat at the table to discuss the issues that we had, like I said earlier, with we're unable to get a judge, or there's not a public defender around, and police officers holding those that are arrested under qualifying offenses for hours. So my role was working with Dr. Walter and then later on the other members of our legislature and the judges and the clerks and the supervisors. And I went to meetings to all of these groups to plead the case, the importance of streamlining our criminal justice system. It was time to do it, and that was my role. Any other questions? All right, we're gonna take a trip up to the new Cap Court, and hopefully the judges can come up, because we're gonna have like an official opening.